Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2 is happening, so let's talk about it. Ever since the DLC dropped for the first game, we've got a few screenshots leaked of different aspects of the game. The first is a series of images of Squidward that appear to be for this new All-Star Brawl 2 game. And the second shows Patrick doing a rock house slam attack, which he did in the one episode where SpongeBob ended up homeless. If I were to wager a guess, I'd say that this is for some sort of Final Smash-like mechanic for this new game. These images were from several months ago, but now it seems we have some new images that showcases a little bit more of this game. The first image shows a sort of updated version of Danny's model, which, that looks a hell of a lot better than it was in the first game. The first game had this really weird proportions with the head being way too big and the limbs being relatively small compared. It seems that Danny is also holding a sword, which I think in later episodes and later seasons, he does get a sword that he uses to attack enemies, but I never really watched that far ahead in Danny Phantom to really see that. The second and third images appear to be portions of the Nintendo Switch box art for the game. You can tell that this is the Nintendo Switch version of the game because of the little red box in the top right corner of this image here. It matches up with the Nintendo Switch logo perfectly. In terms of returning characters, we have SpongeBob, Patrick, Jenny, Cora, and Garfield. You can see his ear right in the bottom corner of this image here. In terms of new characters, we have Raphael, Vlad Plasmius, Jimmy Neutron, and Squidward. You can see his head just poking out from the bottom there. Now, given that we're getting Raphael, it seems pretty likely that we may also be getting Donatello to sort of complete the Ninja Turtles. That was one of the big complaints that people had with the first game, is that we only have two turtles and then April and Shredder. It's just weird to have two turtles and not to have the other two. So it's nice to see that they're rectifying that now. Now, Jimmy Neutron is a pretty obvious pick for this new game because, we had Hugh Neutron as DLC, so having the main character Jimmy in makes perfect sense. Squidward also makes a lot of sense because he was a character that a lot of people requested for the first game, so it makes perfect sense that he's in the second game here. Vlad being in this game is not entirely unexpected. He has played roles in other Nick crossover games before. I sort of have this theory that, considering he's positioned as he is on the box art here, that he may actually only be a boss character. Now, I don't think this is 100%, but it's a theory that I want to throw out there. And the last image I want to talk about is this one showing Manny Rivera from El Tigre. Now, what's most interesting about this image is actually the fact that the creator of El Tigre came out on Twitter and seemingly confirmed that this is in fact a legitimate screenshot. So yeah, it seems that we're getting Manny from El Tigre, which, if you look back at previous character polls, El Tigre was right there within the top 10 for most of them, so it makes sense that they'd include him in this game because, hey, if people want him in, then, why not? So to recap, our newcomers so far consist of Squidward, Raphael, Donatello, Vlad Plasmius, Jimmy Neutron, and Manny Rivera, or El Tigre. Now, what's funny about this current list of newcomers is that it seems to line up almost perfectly with the most recent character vote that was done in the Nick All-Star Brawl Discord. If you replace Bessie and Fanboy and Chum Chum with Donatello and Raphael, it matches up perfectly with what we have so far. So it's my theory that this is going to be the final list of newcomers for Nick All-Star Brawl 2. 15 new fighters sounds pretty reasonable for a game like this, and the ones that are on this list are easily some of the most popular fan-requested choices, so it seems like this would be the perfect list of newcomers, which is why I think this is what we're going to get. Now, on the subject of theories, I get this distinct feeling that we're going to be getting every single character from the previous game. I think it makes a lot of sense. It would be kind of weird to just throw out all the stuff that you had from the first game when transitioning to the second game if you're using the same engine, which I assume that's what they're doing here. If you looked at the screenshots of Squidward and Patrick, it seems to be running on the same engine regardless, so yeah, I think it's safe to say that we're going to be getting all the characters from the previous game. Speaking of things coming back, I get the distinct feeling that we're going to be getting at least most of the stages from the first game, if not all of them. Stages take a long time to develop, so even if you're not bringing back all the characters from the previous game, it would still be worthwhile to at least reuse the stages. It'd be a complete waste of time to have to make SpongeBob a new stage, Patrick a new stage, Sandy a new stage, etc., etc. You might as well just bring back all the stages from the old game. Now, on the topic of music, I think it's possible that we may end up getting a whole new soundtrack for this game. Something that's a bit more lively and energetic. I remember the devs stated in their Discord that when they were making the music, they actually were told by Nick to tone down the music, like don't make it super exciting. And while the music in that game is perfectly fine as is, I think this time around they may want to, go all out with the music and have something a lot more exciting, a lot more action-packed for this kind of game. Of course, I also think there's a chance we could be getting some of the music from the first game ported over to the second game, if not all of it. Again, it's entirely possible to just reuse pretty much everything from the previous game with this new game. Speaking of, since this is indeed a new game, I think it's safe to say that we'll be getting more game modes, specifically more single-player modes. Maybe some sort of analog to home run contest or break the targets from Melee, an adventure mode that's more ambitious than whatever classic mode had. Or, like they could actually tell a story with all these unique characters they bring together instead of just having, one small bit of dialogue here, another small bit of dialogue there at the start of a match, and it's like, whatever. Now, last but not least, I wanted to touch on something involving one of the newcomers, that which being Timmy Turner. There are some people who believe that, despite a lot of people wanting Timmy in the game, that we may not be getting him due to copyright concerns. It's theorized that this mostly has to do with Nelvana, who sort of co-owns some of the earlier seasons of Fairly OddParents. It's believed that they are very hard to work with, which is why some Nick games have Fairly OddParents stuff and others don't. However, I don't exactly think it's because Nelvana is hard to work with. Like, maybe I'm going against the grain here a little bit, but I feel that the reason why Timmy Turner and other Fairly OddParents stuff tends not to appear in certain games is simply because Nick doesn't seem it worthwhile to do it. Like, why, for some rinky-dink random game, do you want to have Timmy Turner and have to go through all the negotiations? Like, it's probably not hard negotiations, but they are negotiations, and it takes time, and more importantly, money. Basically, what I'm saying is, Nick cheaps out sometimes. And I think this is kind of the case for why Timmy and other Fairly OddParents stuff didn't appear in the first game. They just didn't consider it a high priority, like something worth negotiating for those characters. However, because the first Nick All-Star Brawl game did so well, like really exceeded their expectations, I'm thinking that they'll find it worthwhile to do those negotiations and get some Fairly OddParents stuff in this game this time. Now, before we wrap up here, I want to touch on something that came out a little bit ago. On 4chan, there was this alleged leak for Nick All-Star Brawl 2. The devs have already confirmed it's fake, and looking at this list, it seems pretty fake. I mean, two of the characters on here are Sonic and Knuckles, which, assuming we're using the versions from the movies, I mean, they still don't count as Nick characters. And then we have stuff like Patchy the Pirate from SpongeBob and Asami from Korra, which, if anybody who's watched Korra, could you explain to me what exactly she does that would be moveset potential? Because I'm really struggling to come up with a moveset for her. I mean, I don't think she even does much in the series, aside from, like, driving cars and stuff. I don't know. I don't know what they could use to make her into a fighter for this game. So yeah, this leak is pretty much entirely fake, so if ever you see it referenced, just remember it's fake. And with that, we are pretty much done the video. I may make a video later on detailing, like, certain character movesets and going a bit more in-depth in why I think they would make it in and how they play. But for now, I just wanted to do a very basic touch base, cover all the leaks and speculation kind of video, and just get all my thoughts out there and all my speculation out there and kind of see what you guys have to say about it. So feel free to leave a comment with any of your ideas as to, like, newcomers, theories, speculation, and whatnot, and I'll try to read them and reply to them as I can. But until then, that's the end of the video. Okay, bye.